Welcome to Catholic Messenger Conversations podcast. Today we have Bishop Thomas Zinkula and Director of Evangelization Patrick Schmadeke with us today. And we are going to talk about the draft report of the Diocesan Synod, which is now available to the people of the diocese to read. In fact, it's a 2-page spread in the Catholic Messenger this week and online as well. So we want to find out what we've learned from the listening sessions that were held throughout the diocese and what happens next. So I was just wondering, Bishop and Patrick, if you could I know we can't know exactly what's going to happen next, but you can talk to us about the discernment process, right? So I guess I want to ask you, first of all, Bishop, I understand that you participated in a conversation with the National Association for Lay Ministry, focusing on the See-Judge-Act method of analysis. And so I'm just wondering, in the context of the conversation, was on the synod. I guess the context of the conversation was on the synod, correct?
Right.
And so your role in the conversation was about listening?
Right. So there were 3 panels. Each panel had a bishop and 2 lay people, theologians and people working in parishes or what have you, in ministry, lay ministry. And so mine was on listening the first, and then the next one's on judging, discerning, whatever, and then action, kind of a thing. So so it was very good. It was online, the people from around the country, and it was, I don't know, some things that people picked up on were like, and what we talked about, the 3 panelists, was a lot about relationships and experiences. That's for listening, to be in relationship with somebody and to have an experience with them, and so I shared in terms of just what this looks like, and an experience of this sort of thing was the transgender committee. I talked about what we've been doing with that.
Oh, yeah.
And listening to people and taking our time, and that got a lot of chatter in the chat feature. People were, and they wanted to, when they had questions afterwards, the participants, they wanted to talk more about that, and like, you should write something on that, and I said, the Catholic Messenger
has been doing that.
It's out there, and people have picked up on it, and you can just Google it, you'll find that kind of thing. So that was very interesting. They were really kind of, interested in that and taken by that, which is like, okay, we're just finding our way. So that was good. And then I talked about, we had a chance to do an introductory thing, and I talked about the Council of Jerusalem, because that was in the daily readings a couple weeks ago, and then it was on the 6th Sunday of Easter, a reading actually from the Acts of the Apostles.
Yes.
So I kind of talk about that because I can do a big, huge spiel on that, but there's a lot of things about listening that I think you can pull out of that council. I mean, it was the first synod, right? I mean, that was the first synod in the church, and so from the very beginning, and there's this atmosphere of openness and trust. That's the tone that they set. They're rational and reasonable. There's gentle, respectful debate and discussion, and ultimately negotiation and compromise. There's prayer. They're open to the guidance and inspiration of the Holy Spirit. And in the letter that they write after their decision, they say it's the decision of the Holy Spirit in us. So it's like together, which is great. They make room for silence. After Peter spoke, the whole assembly, we're told the whole assembly fell silent, and they listened while Paul and Barnabas spoke. So they give the Spirit time and space to move within and among them. Another thing is that they listened carefully to each other in order to understand the other's position. And so while Peter and Paul were speaking, no one interrupted them. The others waited patiently to speak, and the leaders didn't throw their weight around. And then finally, they wisely, interestingly, agree to hear not only from Peter and Paul and Barnabas, who were very much involved in the controversy about whether the Mosaic law applies to these new Gentile converts, but they also heard from James, who wasn't involved in the controversy. So they consulted a sensible, objective outsider who wasn't focused on defending his actions like the others were. But then I think the most important thing in this whole thing was their perspective, really critical. Instead of it being a matter of you versus me, they viewed the situation as both of us against the problem, and something they had to figure out together. So the disciples appear to have seen themselves not as sitting on opposite sides of the table with the problem between them, but rather as all of them sitting on the same side of the table with the problem in front of them as they face it together. What a difference that makes.
Wow, that's interesting. I wonder how they had the patience. We don't seem to have the patience to listen these days. I wonder how did they settle themselves in prayer? Is that how they had the patience to listen to one another?
I would think undoubtedly, yeah. I think just to be open to the fruits of the Holy Spirit. I was thinking about that in preparing for this this panel discussion. There's patience and peace and joy and charity and those kinds of fruits. To be open to those fruits when we're engaging people in conversation, what a difference that makes.
Yes. Wow. That's really interesting. So how do we, I guess you've just described that, how we prepare ourselves to listen more deeply to others. Yeah. Any other tips? Patrick, do you have any suggestions?
Space for silence comes to mind when we're sort of dialoguing through a problem. It maybe takes several conversations to arrive at a conclusion. So space for silence and patience to work through it collaboratively is just something I would add.
And I'm wondering, I noticed something, I was struck by something yesterday.
Before you get to that, I was just going to think, one of the participants in this conversation, whatever, was they said that, I've heard this before, I think, listen and silent have the same letters.
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, that's cool.
It is. It is. Like,
That's very.
Is that just a coincidence? Or
Okay, then help me with this. Yesterday, I was having, Patrick was there too. I was having a debate with someone about a topic, and the person gave me a very dismissive look. So I think listening also involves gestures, posture. I think because that can be very off-putting. If I already think that someone watching me is dismissing my point of view, that's either going to make me irritated or say, well, you're not valuing my opinion at all. You're not even listening.
So I'm going to flip this around. So I'm going to ask you, Barb. So in that situation, how do you respond when somebody's kind of being like that? How can you? How do you keep listening to that person and stay engaged with that person when they respond that way?
I think I need to take a breath, it's like you said, be silent, which I wasn't silent, but it just maybe count to 10 maybe, or do something to realize that this person has an opinion and I need to think about where they're coming from and where that opinion's coming from, and not worry about that person feeling dismissive. I guess I need to overlook that, maybe? Yeah,
some things I think about, depends on the situation, but sometimes when people are, especially when they're like really disrespectful, which is, that can be, I sometimes think, or often actually, I try to think about, if they're disrespectful and just really kind of ugly about things, they maybe aren't in a very good, they aren't in a good place in their life. They can't be. You just won't be that way, even if you're passionate about something. So then it's like, not that it's an excuse for them to be that way, but I need to maybe pray for this person and recognize that there's this is coming from maybe a dark place that they're struggling with, and so I think that's something I try to do in those situations sometimes.
An additional thing, and I've learned this from parenting, it applies to adults and children equally, I think, is just like restating back to people what it is that they've shared. And in that act, they understand that they've been heard in this sort of accurate way. And then having themselves been heard, that might open up space for more conversation.
That's a very good point. I think that's very good.
Right. And sometimes you need to kind of sort through this stuff. Sometimes there's a kernel of truth there, even when they're they're nasty and they present something to you in not the best way. But like maybe that's partly what we're reacting to, that there is something here I need to pay attention to in myself, or this, however they're looking at, whether their position is on a particular situation. Maybe there's something there there's some truth there. Maybe there's a lot of other stuff too, but so I think that, that's something to do as
I think Pope Francis has said that there may be even a kernel of truth, and so you need to listen to that to even accept that there's a kernel of a truth.
There's been situations in my life where somebody says something like then your parents say you shouldn't say that to somebody, whatever, but they just don't have a filter, whatever.
Yeah.
And they say something, and other people won't say it, and here is this thing that is a blind spot, and like I'm annoyed that they said this thing, and then I reflect on it later and it's like, maybe they exaggerated it, or maybe whatever, and there's more to it than just that, but they're right. This is something I wasn't seeing, and God bless them. Thank you for telling me this, even though it's really hard to hear, and most people wouldn't say it.
Wow. And I suppose with listening sometimes too, I need to understand what's going on, that something is going on in someone else's life. I need to realize people bring baggage with them, whether they realize what that baggage is or not, that we all do, that we've all got things that have happened during our day. So if we come together and misunderstand or misinterpret what someone is saying by the tone of their voice, we need to be thinking a little more. That would be deep thinking, wouldn't it? To just be kind of taking a step back, or I don't know.
You're making me think of just being hospitable in conversations, sort of being a reference point and experience of hospitality to help people unpack the baggage that they themselves may not be aware that they're carrying. And then what does that do for a conversation? If we can lighten each other's load.
Yes. And that happened yesterday again at the office. We realized a couple of us misunderstood each other and backed up, both apologized and realized that each had misinterpreted what the other was saying based on some things that had happened early in the day in our personal lives. So that was really interesting. You need to maybe unpack that a little bit. And then so we ended up on a good start then. And so that was a really good experience. I've just really wanted to know a little bit more about deep listening, because it's just not happening in our society today, and I see that especially with the social media. And that's an interesting thing, Patrick, because you're using social media a lot more in terms, and we're trying to try and evangelize, to try and, help inspire people in their walk with Christ. So how do you, social media has so many ups and downs, or so many pitfalls. How do you reconcile that? How do you use that to encourage people to be good listeners, or to encourage people to be thoughtful in their platform pontificating, or whatever you call it?
Yeah, this is a really important question. I think a helpful reference point that I found is that everything needs to ultimately drive towards personal encounter. So it's not just about staying on social media. Yes, there can be good content there, but we also want it to facilitate encounter and bring people into personal relationship with one another. Pope Francis has this language about evangelization and accompaniment, that we need to remove our sandals before the sacred ground of the other, drawing on Moses in Exodus, encountering God in the burning bush. If we see each other as images, as children of God, that really changes the ball game. Then you're not somebody who I just disagree with. You're an icon of divine love.
Yeah, that's cool. That's very good.
I was thinking about something that you had in one of your columns, or your editorial thing in the middle of the paper a while back. I was looking. I don't know. I had that. Came across that when I was preparing for this convocation thing. So you were quoting Pope Francis, what he had to say in the World Day for his message with regard to the World Day of Social Communications, and he said, "We all have ears, but many times even those with perfect hearing are unable to hear another person. Listening concerns the whole person, not just the sense of hearing. The true seat of listening is the heart. So if we start with our hearts, listen from our hearts, and then focus on the whole person, not this one thing that sort of annoys us, whatever, but the whole person.
That's right.
And love. And we, none of us do that perfectly, but it's something to strive for.
I think that's a good point, because I was thinking about that person yesterday that I was having a debate with, and I stepped back for a moment and I realized, he's very vulnerable. And I just thought about him and I thought, I need to give him some space. I need to acknowledge and affirm some of the things he's thinking. And I do like that. That's where the heart part comes in, I think. The HEART part.
Right.
But so I'm wondering, you have another role in the synod sentencing process. What does that involve? And who's assisting you in that process?
Maybe before we get to that, I can talk about that. So we've done our listening sessions in the diocese, and every diocese is doing this, and then we put together a summary of that, and maybe Patrick can just talk a little bit about that process and where that's at, and then kind of how that concludes, and then I can talk about the next step, which was what you're getting at.
Sure. So quickly, the last month has been the process of synthesizing, which involved 34 committee members reading the 13,000 plus comments and identifying themes and what it is that people are saying about these themes or topics that emerged. From there, it was written into a 10-page document, which is now drafted. There's a 2-week period for public comment from people around the diocese, and then we'll account for those. How
will they have access to it?
Great question. So through the Catholic Messenger.
Of course. Thank you.
Which I saw today, printed.
It looks cool.
It does. The website too?
It's also on the website.
Yeah.
Yep. So people can respond with feedback through email or an online form or mail things to the Chancery. There's more details to be found in the Catholic Messenger.
Right. Thank you, Patrick and Bishop.
Right, and then we hear that and maybe adjust some things in there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we'll take all the comments submitted into account for the purpose of the final draft, which we'll send on by the end of June.
So we thought that was going to the Bishops' Conference, the USCCB in Washington. That's what everyone was kind of presuming, and then they put so all the dioceses send their summaries there, and then they put together their summary and our summary for the United States, and then it goes on to the continents, and then on to Rome, and then summaries there, and then on to Rome. But I discovered a while back that no, it's gonna go to the regions first. There's the it's all, the church is very organized, very Roman, in terms of being orderly. So there's parishes. There's the whole world is divided up into parishes, and then there's deaneries, kind of a thing that we have in our. So there's parishes make up a deanery, and then deaneries make up a diocese, and then there's provinces, like our province is Iowa, the 4 dioceses, and then there's regions. Our region is Iowa, Nebraska, Missouri, and Kansas, and then there's bishops' conferences, national conferences. So, and then there's the whole universal church. So they decided that rather than all these things all these summaries going to the bishops' conference, and they have to deal with all that, we send ours. Everyone in our region sends their summary to the region, right? And so there's I think, I don't know, maybe 16, or there's about 3, 4, 5 dioceses in every state. I'm not sure. So and it turns out, and then that each region pulls together a summary of the summaries. And it turns out that I just happen to be the regional rep for our region.
Wow.
so oh, by the way, here's something that you have the opportunity to deal with in your role. So I'm responsible now for this process for doing that, and I have a team. They suggested, they said form a 4 to 6 member team from those dioceses.
Mm-hmm.
So there's 5. I put it out there to the bishops, and there's 5 people that were involved, like the point person for
Right.
their diocese for the synod, and Patrick is going to help me with that because
Cool.
he's
fun.
employed by the diocese, and so I can like, Patrick, you want to do this, don't you? And he's like, yes, please.
I was
like
going to
the-
take time off in June.
He said some more 17, 18-hour days, right?
Yeah,
Sign me up. It'll be really interesting. I'm looking
It
forward
will
to
be,
it.
and it'll be different. It won't be like
Oh,
how many
that's
pages
good.
were there comments that we had. Like,
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
So it's not that; it's taking the summary. It'll be a different
Good.
feel to
Because
it.
that was almost. Did you not kind of want to pull your hair out of your head? Except you don't have a lot of hair on your head.
That's why. 'Cause the people like you, give me a hard time. They don't put a marble top on a cheap table. No, I think it should be. It'll be a different sort of a process, and it'll be interesting to see kind of what they hear, because you wouldn't see that otherwise.
That's exciting.
So yeah,
We'll get to learn from what everybody else did.
yeah, right. And the Midwest, so it's kind of we got that.
And so those regional reports then will go to the USCCB.
Right. And then they
then
summarize those.
Okay. Wow. I'm
Quite the
really
process.
curious to hear what. It'll be interesting to see what actually gets to the Synod of Bishops in Rome, to see what comments you can glean out of it that, reflected our diocese comments.
Oh yeah, really, yeah. There'll be a lot of. It'll be some similar things.
Some
probably,
repetitive.
but-
I mean,
but
yeah, I'm
there
sure.
could be. Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to see if that our bishops' conference, because we're supposed to be transparent, and
Right.
it'd be interesting to see if they publish what ours is,
Oh, the regional report.
or the regional and also the national one.
I'm
Oh,
curious.
yeah.
I would like to
Yeah.
see all of that.
We're supposed to do that, so we'll see if they. I mean, what's the secret?
So when is your report due? The regional.
They haven't said yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the Bishop Synod in Rome is in 2023, like October or something like that.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
there's a little bit of time, obviously.
Right.
But, I mean, so how many reports go to the USCCB, I wonder? I mean, because is there like almost 200 dioceses in the
I know, but you're
country?
talking regions now.
Right, so
and
regions.
There's maybe, I don't know how many regions there are. 12 to
Oh, okay,
15.
okay.
Or, we're number 9, so I don't know.
Oh, okay.
At the most, there's maybe 15. I don't know. So it's
Okay.
reasonable.
Okay. So what are next steps in our diocese? What's happening now? Can you describe the now we're in the discernment process, or what's happening right
Yeah,
now?
I would say, that we're, I mean, we need to sit with it and reflect on what we heard. And there's no rush to
Right.
kind of go to action. Okay, what are we going to do? Who knows? But we are, I mean, I don't know what other dioceses are going to do. There's some probably that'll just say, okay, we're done with this and we can continue on with life. But I don't think, we're not going to do that. I
No.
mean, that's not what Pope Francis will do. He'll put together something and, okay, here's what we're going to do with this. So we can do, on our level,
Right.
just process what we've heard and discern. And so we're talking about how to do that. That's where we're at right now. Like, what might that look like?
Oh, that's interesting. Can you talk about, either one of you or both of you, about what were some of the surprises or some of the things that weren't so surprising to you from the listening
Patrick
session?
is way more conversant about this than I am.
One of the things that I most appreciated that the report brings to light is the vastly different experiences that people have of the church across the diocese.
Yeah.
And that could be on any given topic. That topic breaks one person's heart and fills another person's heart. So I'm appreciative that the report does a good job of reflecting that back to people, because that's important to be aware of, that we don't all have the same experience of the church, and we come together as community with these different experiences. So, I knew cognitively that people have different experiences of the church, but this report this summer really drives that home in a way that I think is impactful.
So that's going to be hard to tease that out, isn't it? When you've got people saying, this breaks my heart, this fills my heart, like, for instance, on church teaching or on music and the liturgy. So how do you reconcile those very divergent?
I mean, Pope Francis said that this would be messy,
It is messy.
and and we were so afraid of messiness.
Yeah.
But boy, that's pretty much life. It just gets messy in one way or another. So I don't think we need to be afraid of tension.
Right.
It's not like, oh, thank God there's this more tension in my life. But tension can be, depending on what you do with it, it can be very destructive, or it can be, constructive. I mean, you can if you invite the Spirit into it, and like there's tension at the Council of Jerusalem, and
Right.
it resulted in there's a good outcome with that ultimately because of how they approached it and listening to each other and prayer and all that whole thing. So this is okay. How are we going to deal with this tension? And
Hopefully we've learned through the synod that listening is the key to resolving tension.
yeah, and so it continues. It's not like, okay, we're not listening, now we do the judging and the acting. I mean, even in the documents themselves, Patrick drew this to my attention, for the preparatory document and then the vademecum. It talks about, the discernment part of things and action, that listening, that's a part of those things too.
Right.
It's not just all of us, okay, we're done listening, but like, for instance, it says, I have this in front of me because I had it for this lay ministry thing. So it says the temptation, it talks about the temptation of focusing only on structures. And it says the synodal process will naturally call for a renewal of structures at various levels of the church, action, whatever, in order to foster deeper communion, fuller participation, and more fruitful mission. At the same time, the experience of synodality should not focus first and foremost on structures, but on the experience of journeying together to discern the path forward, inspired by the Holy Spirit. The conversion and renewal of structures will come about only through the ongoing conversion and renewal of all the members of the body of Christ. So it continues this relationship and dialogue, and which obviously should include deep listening. That's supposed to be part of our decision-making process as well, and our discernment process. It continues throughout the whole thing.
That's cool. What does that look like? What do you see that, what do you envision with the idea of listening? I love the idea of that. We just need to really take time to listen. So what, is there some kind of structure? It's organic. What does it look like in our diocese? We continue conversations. We encourage conversations at the parish level, at the diocesan level. What do you think that looks like?
Well, you're kind of talking about like how to form people to listen better, and we talked a little bit about that early on with prayer and encounter and walking with each other, but
Yeah, I'm thinking of the example you brought up earlier, just music and liturgy.
Right.
So it's one thing to ask, like, what breaks your heart? And somebody to say, I love this music, or I don't like this music, and for another person to say, I love this music.
Right.
We need to move into sort of the next layer of the conversation. Well, like, why? Why is it that breaks your heart? And that moves us from a space of sort of exchanging data. This fact sort of breaks your heart, or this fact fills your heart, into a deeper relationship. So all of a sudden I understand what's at stake for you in this topic or in this experience. And so I don't just see you then as someone who disagrees with me. I see you as someone who has a set of experiences over the course of your life, perhaps, that informs this sort of thing that's broken or filled your heart. And then I sort of have to own that then, because I've heard you share your experience in this deep way. I can't just see you anymore as someone merely who disagrees.
That's a good point.
I think, right. So I think it begins with ourselves, right?
Right.
You know, in terms of like Mahatma Gandhi was, I think he's the person who's kind of credited with saying, "You must be the change you wish to see in the world."
Yeah.
You know, so what's going on with me? How do I, just the stuff we've been talking about, do I
Right.
listen very deeply? And, you know, I think about, when I was kind of thinking about this convocation or conference, whatever this thing was that I was participating in this morning, I was thinking about people who, like role models for listening, patron saints of listening. And so Mother Teresa, you'd always hear about her, and I experienced this myself, you know, she gives, and Pope Francis, and maybe maybe Mahatma Gandhi, I don't know, but that they give their full, undivided, genuine, sincere, loving attention to the person in front of them. You feel it, you know it. It's just, you know, and that in and of itself is transformative. And it's like, I want to be like them. I want to be like that. So that in and of itself goes a long way. And we all can work on that.
Yeah.
And so that just that can really help, you know, in our conversations with folks.
I appreciate that very much. That's very, very helpful. It's making me feel like, wow, I can be a better listener from the get-go right now.
When I was talking to Francis, Patrick, about this, getting ready for this panel discussion, whatever, and like when when someone says after a conversation, that was a really great conversation, it was really great, you know, often the reason they feel that way is because they talked a lot. Oh. So you know, somebody that's really good about, what do you think about this, and engage in somebody in conversation, more often, at least I think I and a lot of people, you want to do the talking, you know, you kind of want to say your stuff, and we all know people who really, you know, are good at that, and we all can be that way in certain respects. But to get somebody else talking, we all want to talk, and the more somebody talks, the more afterwards they're going to say, that was a great conversation, you know. So those kinds of things go a long ways.
That's very interesting. So this is the last question. We've got to wrap things up. What happens, you know, there are some people who said, we hope this report doesn't end up, you know, on a shelf collecting dust. So this diocesan synod report. So how can you assure them that's not going to happen?
Well, I can say that that's something we don't want. Right. You know, I can't say, well, this is exactly what's going to happen, but we're just, you know, we're still in this process of finalizing the summary, but we want to do some discernment, and we've listened a lot to folks with this process in a big way, but also Rediscovering Sunday, where there's a survey, and we list people then, and Vision 2020, there was listening sessions, remember that?
Yep.
In the fall of that year. And so we've heard a lot, and we need to keep listening, like we were saying, we need to keep doing that, but while we continue to listen, and you know, we need to kind of start discerning what we've heard, and involve continued listening with that whole process, and then move to action eventually. So I have some ideas on that. It's too early on to talk about it, in this manner. But with the staff at the Chancery, we're talking about the next step. What do we want to do? Like, what kind of process do we want to use for discernment? And then we'll see where that goes.
Oh, good. And we'll share that with listeners.
Eventually.
Yeah, at another upcoming podcast.
I would just want to add briefly that the sort of like making sure this doesn't sit on a shelf can also be in the hands of the listeners, because this document is publicly available.
Right.
And so what is it that people at the parish level think can be done with the insights gained through this experience? Way too much work has been done to let this sit on a shelf. That will not be happening.
Very good.
And they can continue their 58,000 cups of coffee conversations. I mean,
Yeah.
that was listening, but okay, it could be more of a dialogue the next time, right? I mean, with still focus heavily on listening, but that can continue. Hopefully that can become a pattern for people.
Exactly.
And in the reports, the online submission form for the cups of coffee, one question we asked was, do you plan to follow up with this person? Sort of a yes, no, maybe. I forget the exact percentage breakdown, but the vast majority said, yes, I'm going to follow up with this person. So there's energy there for that to continue.
It kind of broke the ice maybe for people.
Yeah.
That's definitely a caffeine stimulant or conversation, right? Thank you.
Yes.
We'll end on that note and look forward to having you back for another podcast in the future.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.